Welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. Europe is full of great bars. And by that, I mean places that aren't just about the drinks, but atmosphere, history, and how they connect you to the place they're located in. In fact, I'd argue that no trip to Europe is complete without stopping at a couple of them. And today's guest is someone who wholeheartedly agrees. Jack Anderton is the founder of the European Bar Guide, and he is an aficionado of the continent's finest watering holes. On the show, Jack and I talk a little bit about the backstory of his website before chatting about a couple of the most interesting spots he's visited during his research. Then we each share 5 of our favorites, 10 bars across Europe that are full of character where nights can turn into lifelong memories. From the brown cafes of the Low Countries to jazz joints in Scandinavia and even a one-of-a-kind Bosnian bar, we have a blast crisscrossing the continent in search of great places to raise a glass and soak up the atmosphere. All right, let's go to the bar.
Find the gap between the train and the platform.
All right, let's welcome to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns, Jack Anderton, the founder of the European Bar Guide and lover of European pubs, bars, and any other type of establishment on the continent.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jack. Glad to have you. Been admiring your site and your work for a while now, so it's cool to talk.
Yeah, definitely. Likewise.
How'd you turn your passion into European Bar Guide?
I guess it started after I'd been on quite a fair bit of traveling for about 5 or 6 years. And I have a friend, and when we talk about bars and pubs we've been to, he can picture them, but he doesn't know the names of them. He has no way of retaining that information, whereas I'm the other way around. I kind of know what it's called, what street it was on. And then after a while, I realized that I'd stored all this information in my head. So I had probably 150 to 170 bars I could recall having been to. And when I looked around, there's a few websites that are kind of similar, but they have a slightly different focus. So my idea was, let's run a bar guide which is about not just what you're drinking in the bar, but what it's like to be in that bar. What's the atmosphere like? What do they do that sort of makes it stand out from somewhere else? Also specific to countries, specific cultures which simply do things in a different way to one another. I found that really fascinating anyway. So that was a real motivator to set this up. And that was about 8 years ago.
You kind of just had this skill of being like, we were in Prague and we went to so-and-so bar on this street, and you can remember those.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Obviously, everyone's wired up a slightly different way to one another. And that appears to be one of my special skills. I don't know who I inherited that from, honestly.
So you set up the site, and then you've now stumbled upon then doing your top 100 bars in Europe.
Yeah, so the top 100 is kind of a way of just sort of annually reminding people that we're there, but also exhibiting bars which people would not have thought to go to, maybe places as well that give people inspiration, and just kind of show people that hidden behind these strange corners in Europe, there are these one-off experiences that you can have, which in some cases are a reason to visit that place in and of itself, I would argue.
I think you bring up a good point there, because if you look at your top 100, you're not going to be hit over the head with the biggest, most popular destinations. Like, there's a lot of cities that make appearances and establishments like, Saint Malo in France, or Cologne, Novi Sad, Granada. Is there Granada in there?
There is. Yeah.
Okay, good. And you've also touched on a good point there of how these bars offer an insight into these cities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I know you've traveled in Belgium a fair bit, and I think Belgium's a great example of that, where the bars are almost like an extension of the country's personality. You can say the same for lots of other countries, but it's particularly vivid in Belgium because they have such a particular sense of humor. But Belgium as a country is a country of collectors. Loads of guys just have their own little private museums for things. So you tend to find a lot of bars when they're looking around to decorate them just full of people's personal collections of items. And it does make a lot of their pubs very characterful to go in. It's as I say, an extension of their personality.
Through my perusing of the site, and you don't have to have an eclectic interior with loads of things on the wall, interesting things, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. I'm a big fan of very sort of minimalist pubs as well. Some places have like absolutely no decoration whatsoever, just tables and chairs basically, and they make up for that in lots of other fun ways.
How many pubs are on the site total?
Yeah, so at the moment, they're kind of split between ones I've personally been to and actually rate. And there's a separate section which is built from other recommendations people give me that I've researched online that I think would fit the kind of profile that we're looking for. So overall, when you combine the two, it's above 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't have the exact figure, but yeah, definitely in excess of 4,000.
What are some of your things that you look for in a bar?
I guess the priority is like how comfortable you feel in that place. How much personality does it have? I really like going to places where you feel like you're participating in something, whether that is something that's happened over centuries in some cases, or it's a very particular quirky or eccentric thing that they do and no one else does. That kind of helps build up a little bit of love and loyalty for a place, I think. I've just been to Poland, and I went to a craft beer bar called IBU, and they have, I think, 20 beers on tap, and they're actually self-dispensing, so you can walk around this big central atrium with taps everywhere. That's really fun, and it's a really good example of where Polish culture is in terms of beer culture. So it's not all about crusty old pubs. It's very much about, do these individual places really do what they're trying to do well?
You're just kind of saying this place is attempting to do this and they do a good job of it.
Yeah, so to give an example, obviously for many years, Rate Beer has been out there. So if you just want to go to pubs and bars that have a great selection, you can do that. I would say that's not a bad place to start, but it's not the be all and end all. There are some really great places that you would just completely miss out if you used that as your one and only guide around European cities.
So what else do you like to do in Europe besides go to bars all day? Walk me through a day of a Jack Anderton day in a European city.
Well, if it's the Czech Republic, then there's going to be a lot of pubs involved. But honestly, I like learning about the city's history. So, after breakfast, I would go to a museum, explore the historic quarters of wherever I am. In Germany, I'm quite into sort of timber frame, Fachwerk, those kind of towns. So I often pay visits to small towns which have quite a low profile, even if they don't have a great bar scene, because I'm also interested in that kind of thing. Just like you, I'm really into rail travel, and tram travel. So any city that's got a tram network, I'm very keen on. I think it's like the best way of getting around a city personally.
What's your favorite tram line?
Oh God. Well, Prague, I guess, because it's just so extensive. But yeah, I've been to loads of other ones. Like Reims has a tram line, but only I think one with a fork going off it. So it's not very extensive, but it is really useful because of the shape of the city. It's modern, it's clean, it just works.
Yeah, no, a tram's nice. There's just something retro about them. Before we get into our favorite bars, I wanted to ask you about a really fascinating element of the site is this glossary of terms. Because,
Oh yeah.
It's called the European Bar Guide, but the word bar has about 1,000 different variations throughout Europe, from the pubs of the British Isles to the beer halls in Germanic lands to locales, and help me out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could reel off a good 50 or 60, I suppose. Yeah, it's each of these terms. So in Spain, for example, there's a city called Jerez that is famous for sherry bars. And those sherry bars are called tabanco. You don't really find them apart from Jerez and some of the towns around it, anywhere else that's called Tabanco, unless they're paying homage to that. So that's really region specific. There's an area in Czech Republic which I only just realized last week when I was researching. They call bars pohostinství. The middle of that has a host, which is also in hostinec, which is a much more common Czech term. So I still have to look into that one, but it's in Moravia in the southeast of Czech Republic, and it's really common. So if you go around there, you'll see that on pub signs everywhere. But again, the reason I have a glossary on my site is because if you're traveling, that particular page will help work out what you can expect to find in a place with that name.
It's fascinating that how many different terms there are, and also for different levels. And you get into some complicated stuff there where you've like, certain types of pubs for certain types of maybe class and all that.
Uh-huh.
And that's a complicated thing that we're not going to really dive into, but some of these terms kind of give that away in the name a bit.
Oh, for sure. One of the ones that has just sprung to mind I should probably share is a Hungarian term called kestlobáló, and that translates as a knife thrower. You can probably interpret yourself as not a high-class establishment exactly. So back in the day, these places used to have a thick curtain behind the front door, so that if you were there with your partner, your job would be to sneak behind the curtain and see if it's safe or if things are maybe kicking off in there. But that's just one of very many. So you can go on my site, sift through about 50 of these, and I try and give examples. So specific venues that you can then go onto Google and search if you're really interested in it. It can be misleading, and especially if you're using Google, because Google doesn't really know what a bar means, because in Poland, a bar is a lunch diner, potentially. So if you're typing in bar in Poland, Google's just going to throw a ton of milk bars or sort of cheap canteen type diners at you, rather than actual evening places where you would hang out with friends, for example. So you have to be really careful. And again, this is kind of why I thought of doing this site, because so many of those little things fall in the gaps, and I see it as my job to help people.
We want to know about these things because we want these insights into the culture, and so you're doing a great job there. Appreciate it.
Sure, not at all. And to be honest, it's inspired by having like some of the best nights in my life doing this. So I want people to be getting in on a piece of that action. It really is. It's based on having a good time. Like when it comes down to it, like I'm here because I have a great time. I want other people to have a great time as well.
Not all heroes wear capes.
That's true, including myself.
Let's talk about some of your most unique ones on your top 100. A couple caught my eye. I want you to tell me about this place in Slovakia that's on a mountainside.
Okay, so that place is called Chata pod Rysmi, which is near a city called Poprad in eastern Slovakia. That is near a mountain range called the Tatras, which several people listening to, I'm sure, will be aware of, even if they haven't been to it. It's a fairly famous mountain range in Europe, I'd say. So you have the low Tatras and the high Tatras, and this pub, if you want to call it that, is based several thousand feet up towards the summit of the highest peak in Poland and Slovakia, I should say. They share that. And that's Mount Rysy. This is quite accessible. So if you're fit and healthy, you can go and do this. You just have to get a train to Poprad and then a bus up to, I think it's called Sturbskie Pleso, a small village where most people start this hike from the Slovakian side. Or if you want to do it from the Polish side, you can go from a city called Zakopane. It has its beer delivered by hikers on foot, volunteers as well. So no one gets paid. These are guys who are, they're built like mountaineers. Let's just say that. So, 6 foot plus, these guys are solidly built. It's not just the beer that they transport up. They will have a keg on their back and a pile of 4 or 5 other things which go way, way above their head. They have like a wooden ladder, which this is strapped to. And they set off from civilization, and they climb on foot with all this stuff, and they dump it off at the at this guest house. So it's like an inn, which is completely disconnected from civilization. So in the winter months, there'll only be a couple of people there because it will just be a sheet of snow covering the entire area, and it'll be impassable to everyone except really well-trained mountaineers. But for the other 6 months of the year, it's open to the public. Everything is doable, so there's no you don't need to bring a pickaxe or anything.
What type of hike are we talking about? Like a couple hours?
Yeah, so from where we started, probably 2.5 hours to get there. Reasonably steep uphill climb, so yeah, it's fairly taxing. You don't want to take it lightly, but there's a well-marked trail. It's pretty safe, I would say. When you get to the hut at the top, you can stay over. You just have to let them know in advance, and it's a good idea to book if you are planning on staying over well in advance, because this is a seriously popular place. So I would recommend, if you are serious on going and staying at this place, probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I would say. Do it about 9 or 10 months before you're planning on visiting, and maybe go around late August, early September, because that's when the real crush ends and the paths are not as touristy, but there's still going to be good weather. In terms of this pub, as I say, they have keg beer, which you can drink thousands of feet up, which is not going to be too many other places I can think of where you can do that. So that's pretty special. But the pub itself is as well. So in the evening, because they don't have sort of formal electricity, or the electrics are used for essentials, this is a lamplit pub. So they fire up oil lamps, and it's a really nice warm feeling because they have a steam heater in the pub. They've got a piano and a guitar, and you're just sat around with everybody else who's decided to stay this one night at this pub. And as you can imagine, the atmosphere is like really, truly fantastic.
And you spent the night?
Yeah, we spent the night, and overnight the weather turned on us. So it was like really, really horrible, windy, rainy morning. And rather than go up to the summit, which we were planning to, we had to descend the mountain and double back and get the bus over to Poland instead. So that was an anti-climax, but the actual experience in the pub made up for that.
That sounds like a dream. Kind of reminds me of there's a hostel in a village in Switzerland called Gimmelwald, and you take a funicular up. So you can hike it. It's a couple hours.
Yeah.
It's not as harsh as what it sounds like you're describing, but it's this hostel, up on this mountains village. There's no cars, anything. It's overlooking the beautiful Alps. And, there's a bar in there. Not quite as extreme as what you're describing, but just that atmosphere of at night being cozy inside. And there's a guitar, just that camaraderie of people, just like, we made it, we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And those kind of remote places, it doesn't have to be up a mountain, but something really remote where people are just gathering together for one night. It just has that little sprinkling of magic to it, I think.
And that's part of the reason I think why we love travel is there is that dusting of magic of people from all around that get together, probably only for one night. There was something special there for that night.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, that's just feeds into why this site exists, why I made it, because some people, their idea of a holiday maybe sat on a sun lounger relaxing, and that's totally cool. I understand people have very busy lives and they need to relax, but lots of people like myself, I'm still quite energized and motivated to get out there, see loads of places. I find it really stimulating in all kinds of different ways, but especially social, because when you talk to people who are not from your background, you get a different perspective on life, and I find that the most rewarding aspect.
One other unique place I wanted to ask you about was this bar in Cologne called Papa Joe's Jazz Local.
Yeah, absolute classic. In fact, this venue is probably, I would say, one of the main reasons why my site exists, because it was one of the first places I actually went to back in around 2007. So Papa Joe's is actually two places. there's a place called Klimperkasten, which is just a more regular pub. I say regular, it's still pretty off the wall. But there's also a music venue called Jazz Local, which is just down the road. And they do live music every single day, as far as I'm aware. And there's a little scoreboard on the front outside, which shows how many live gigs that they've done since they've been open. And it's into the tens of thousands now. A very difficult one to describe. There's a automatic cocktail machine. For starters, instead of regular tables and chairs, there's a stage opposite the pub, opposite the bar area rather. When you walk in, there are some Roman ruins under some reinforced glass at the entrance. There are these little animated heads bobbing up and down with trumpets and trombones. And yeah, when you walk in, there's usually some live music going on, and it attracts, because it's Cologne, it attracts a lot of people from different, not only locals, but lots of tourists as well. So everyone, because of the novelty factor, everybody's just in a really excitable mood. And that's, again, kind of atmosphere that you can't really manufacture. A lot of pubs simply will not be able to recreate that, but they've just found this combination that really makes it an exciting place to go. And, back in 2007, I'd never been anywhere remotely like it. So it was like being switched on immediately to, oh my God, this is what it's like in Europe. So I can also recommend visiting the other Papa Joe's. I think that comes around 20th in my list, because that also has a very strange novelty. It's like a jukebox, but the jukebox has sort of mechanical marionettes, puppets playing, and the Germans, as you know, like a sing-along. So in the evening, everybody comes along and puts a load of money in the machine, and start singing along to all these tunes.
It's funny you mentioned that, because my wife and I are going to be going to Antwerp for the first time soon, and I was researching Antwerp bars, and there's a bar there that has like the last remaining one of these machines in Antwerp.
Okay, right. Do you remember the name of that one?
Cafe Beveren.
Oh, yes, Beveren, right. Yeah, I see, when I was last in Antwerp, I didn't get to Beveren because it was closed. And one thing people need to be aware of with Belgium is if you go in the summer, that's when a lot of bars have their summer holidays. So they usually take 2 weeks out around July time. And that can lead to a bit of disappointment.
I love the way that you were like, Beveren. Yeah, the one that got away. I'm sure you got a few of these ones that got away.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I would have needed to stay, I think, another 3 days just to even cover half of the venues in Antwerp. It's famous for just sheer breadth and depth of good bars. It's probably the home of the Brown Cafe, the style of pub, which is probably more famous in Amsterdam, I guess. But I think, Antwerp has that kind of working class Brown Cafe in many, many places. It hasn't died out like it has in lots of other cities.
Okay, you're getting me excited, because I spent a couple years living in Amsterdam, so I fell head over heels for the Brown Cafe.
Nice.
All right, so now we're going to have a little fun. We're going to go through 10 of the best bars in Europe. Most of these are going to be on your top 100. I'm going to pick 5. You're going to pick 5.
Let's go. Are you starting or should I start?
Guess first.
Quite relieved, actually. The one I'm going to suggest now, several people have told me it was closed throughout the course of the year. But before today, I had a little check, and there are new reviews coming in, so I think it's open. This bar is in Sarajevo, in Bosnia. The name is Zlatna Ribica, which means goldfish. This was one of the first places I remember going to before my guide even started, which ended up being a real inspiration for it, because just like some of the others that I've mentioned, it just has a particular atmosphere, theme, appearance, which was so far outside my radar and comfort zone at the time, that it felt kind of like slipping into a new dimension almost. And that's the kind of experience you can expect if you've not traveled too much around Europe, or if you go to Bosnia, obviously you're expecting something a little bit more exotic than you might find in Germany or France. It's going to have that slightly Oriental twist on it, and that's what Zlatna Ribica has. So outside the pub, there is all this kind of what would you say, paraphernalia. So there's this little sort of carnival stand, and it just gives you a hint of what to expect inside. There is obviously, given it's called Goldfish, there is a goldfish inside, but the decoration is just extraordinary. Like, just to give you an example, like in the toilets, just stood on top of a roll of toilet paper is an old black and white TV showing nature documentaries from the 1960s.
Those were the best nature documentaries.
Yeah, absolutely. We know for a fact that they were only the highest quality of nature documentaries. They hide the cocktail menu, which is written in permanent marker on some playing cards in the lamps above where you sat. So when they come over to take your order, suddenly it's sort of coming down from this lamp. Smoking is allowed. I would argue, even if you're not a fan of smoky environments, this is one exception you probably need to make, because it just feeds into this whole kind of woozy feel to the place. So you're sat surrounded by all this antique furniture, lamp lights, all these sort of warm hues, and especially in kind of autumn and winter, it just has this very special, cozy quality. You feel like you're in a sort of gentleman's lounge that's been kind of taken over by a load of youngsters, basically.
My wife and I spent about a week there once, and we didn't make it there and didn't know of it.
Unless you're looking for it, you're not necessarily just going to walk down the street and see it. So, yeah, I can completely understand.
Where is it in the city?
It's in the city centre, so it's not in the old bazaar area. It's a little bit west of that, but it's easily reachable. You can walk there in 10 minutes from where the core of the city is.
The Goldfish in Sarajevo, and despite reports, it's still kicking.
Yeah, sure. I was really worried because every year you tend to lose a good few bars. I have to do a refresh to make sure that the information's accurate, and every year you end up finding that some of your real favourites have closed. And I really didn't want to lose this one because, firstly, Sarajevo's not got anything even remotely like it, but also it is a genuine top 10 for me in Europe.
My first one, I'm going to start close to home here in York, with the Bluebell. Traditional pub. York is a city that is known for pubs. There's this much talked myth, urban legend that there's a pub for every day of the year. That's not true, but it doesn't stop the idea of that. So there's a lot of pubs in this city, but not every single one's a great pub. So this one hides a little off the main bit on a street called Fossgate. It's down, there's an atmospheric little bridge at the other end of Fossgate where you get a nice view of the street and you can see the York Minster spires at the top. And this little unassuming pub, you'll see these polished red tiles on the outside, and then you go in and it's a very small pub. You've been there.
Many times, yeah. It's a true favorite of mine. I mean, what can you really say about it? Again, York doesn't really have anything like it. It has many, many good pubs, ones that I would highly recommend anyone visiting, like the Golden Bull or the Phoenix, for example, or the Swan on Bishopgate. But the Bluebell is a one-off, and not just in York, probably in England as well.
2 small rooms and a hallway. Yeah. If you catch it at the right time, it's quiet. There's a little light going through. But it is just an endearing little pub that is the pride of the pub-going public here in York, I would say. And even though it's famous, I still think it manages to fly under the radar a little bit just because of its location and its frontage. If you're walking past there, you might not notice it. But once you do, it looks like a set from a movie. It's so impressive from the outside.
Absolutely. And I think the size of the place acts in a way as its own screen, because some people will walk in and just immediately think, oh, it's full, or oh, this is freaking me out, and I just turn around and walk away. It's somewhere where you can have a conversation with a stranger really easily. I think that's probably one of the best things I can say about it. I've been to that place so many times, and yeah, you just have to turn your head and someone will say something and start a conversation.
On Sunday nights, they had cheese and crackers out at the bar. And, I had a friend in town from the States, and we were out on a Sunday night. And even though York gets crazy on the weekends sometimes, folks, Sunday night's a quiet kind of descent, and you can kind of do a nice little late Sunday pub crawl, which is nice. And went in there. There's only about 6 or 8 people in there, chilled out, had some crackers and cheese. So Bluebell on a Sunday night. You can't miss this pub in York.
Yeah, fully agree with this suggestion, by the way. Completely on board with that. Okay, so what do we have next? The next place is called the Little Bruges Bear. You won't need to guess what city it's located in. Belgium, whether you want to call it Bruges or Brugge, as the locals do, that's up to you. This is a pretty famous pub nowadays. Since the film In Bruges came out around 2007, tourism to the city just kind of exploded. A small brown cafe set off one of the main thoroughfares into the city square. So it's quiet, actually. And when you only have to really go off 1 or 2 streets in Bruges and you're more or less alone. That's what people don't really realize about it. Like a lot of the time people think Bruges is kind of just clogged with tourists and oversaturated, but that only really applies, in my opinion, to maybe 2 or 3 spots in the city. Otherwise, it's actually a really quiet place. The Little Bruges Bear's appeal, I guess, is that it has really specialist beers. So if you're into your ales, especially, lambics, for example, that they have from the likes of Cantillon on rotation. So you can come back and there's always going to be different beers on tap to try. And then they have, like a lot of the best Belgian pubs, a huge Bible full of bottles if you want to start exploring the bottle selection. And it really means that it just combines the 2 really important aspects of pub going, which is it's not going to get boring because there's always something new to drink. It's also a really nice, really characterful pub with a personality. So it's somewhere that you always want to go back for the familiar aspects, but also for the unfamiliar because you're going to be trying something different. I would recommend anybody who's going to Bruges would pay attention to the opening hours, because if you turn up at opening time, you're going to get a seat, guaranteed. They don't do table reservations there, I don't think, from my memory. So it's first come, first served. So you're going to probably struggle around Christmas going in there at 9 o'clock in the evening to get a seat. Not impossible, but don't risk it. Whereas midweek in February, you'll probably get a seat anytime you like.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought this one up because this is one that I've been to. I was there last on I believe it was a Monday night, like October 26th or something. And we were able to walk in and get a seat.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Okay, well, I just wanted to take a second to say thanks for listening to Rails, Ales, and Old Towns. I hope you're enjoying this episode and that it's helping you get excited for your next European adventure. Be sure to check out the link in the episode description, because there you'll find all the information you need if you decide to follow up on the places and topics that came up on the show. Oh yeah, if you are digging the podcast and you had a spare minute, I'd be forever grateful if you were to leave a review or a rating on the platform you're listening on, as those little things do go a long way. And if you really want to get crazy, why not give me a follow on Instagram or Facebook at Rails, Ales, Old Towns. Back to the show.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
So the next one I want to talk about is a couple hours north on a train, well, a few hours north on a train from Bruges in Amsterdam. One of my all-time favorite bars, The Doctor, Café de Doctor. Dates back to the 18th century. It was originally founded by a surgeon. That's the story. Family-run bar. This place is literally a step back in time. And again, hiding in plain sight in the absolute center of Amsterdam. This place is just hiding down a little alley. They're only open, I think, 4 nights a week. You walk in, you're going to hear jazz, dusty bird cages in the corner, all kinds of little trinkets and hidden things. And it's this friendly couple that's running. It's been family run for a long time. Friendly couple that's running it. My wife and I have talked to them a few times, and it was actually one of my proudest moments. We went back in after moving away from Amsterdam 5 years later, and then we talked to them. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're the people that talked to us about going to Cologne Christmas markets and things."
Oh, that's
And
so nice.
the last time we were in Amsterdam, we went in there before we caught an overnight train to Vienna. Just went in there, sat for a couple hours. They'll usually have some sausage or some cheese on the side too. Had a little beer. I love in the Netherlands, they pour these little beers, little draft beers, that little shot of Genever. It's just an atmosphere like no other. And it's so small too that it scares away the riffraff.
Yeah, there's so many quirky aspects, like the little spiral staircase up to the toilets, which, on busy nights, that is like a death trap. It's a really fun place. It's like you say, the couple running it are always, I think, playing vinyl records or something, jazz records, jazz and blues, which really suits the atmosphere. It's candlelit. Because it's so small, you have to take your chances with it. Sometimes it's impossible to get in, and you just have to accept that. But you can always pop back and try a second time on the same evening.
And I just love, like I said, I know I'm hammering this home, but if you're sitting there on their outside, now I recommend sitting inside if you can, but if you're sitting outside, you'll see hundreds of people walking down the main street. No one even gives it a second look.
The Doctor's got a particular personality to it, which, if it really clicks with you, it's one of those bars that will just stay with you forever. Like it did with my brother. He was there on a business trip, and always talks about it. Next one up is also in Bruges. So it's becoming a bit of a running theme, the Lowland bars. But this one really is unlike anything else. So, this is a kind of venue that you would go to just because it's there. It's a tourist attraction. It's not just a bar. It's someone's personal labor of love. It's called Retzin's Lucifernum. Now, this is part museum, part art gallery, part collection. You're entering into this guy's house, and you're invited to wander around all this artwork. Some of it's quite macabre, I would say.
Well, you said the word Lucifer in the name.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you an idea of what happens when you step in this place, you're greeted by a guy who looks like Dracula's butler. So there's a kind of formal introduction. So they're basically also giving you the price, which it isn't cheap, but when you combine the cost of a drink with kind of a museum experience, it's justified doing as a one-off for sure. You're then invited to go and explore the museum, go around all the different rooms in this guy's mansion, and then afterwards you go into the bar for a drink at the end. And this place is not only eclectic, it's vast. You could spend easily an hour looking at every single thing. You just cannot have an experience quite like this. I can only really say suck it and see. If cocktails aren't your thing, they do have beers, so it's not a problem. It's mainly a cocktail bar. Strangely enough, I think they have Peruvian staff, so there are decent Peruvian cocktails you can have a go at.
Get yourself a pisco sour or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the pisco sours going. I think these days it costs about €15 to get in, and that includes a cocktail and obviously this museum/art gallery. The guy who runs it, I think he's called Willie, is a real character, like genuine eccentric. I know I'm shocking everyone by saying that, but it's probably going to be one of those things that people either love or hate. But so often those are the best places, in my opinion. Like, just trying to smooth things over for everybody doesn't necessarily create a great bar. You've got to sometimes be singular and have a singular vision. And this is like one of the best examples you can find of a bar with a singular vision. So yeah, absolutely. Retzin's Lucifernum.
Yeah, never heard of that one. Never been. So I'm going to pencil that in on the list. And you need a balance of experiences. All right, so we're going north now. This is going to be the only bar in our 10 great bars in Europe. that is not featured on your top 100, but you never know. One day it can dream. And you kind of mentioned, when we were talking about that Papa Joe's, and this could be a subject of a whole nother podcast, but jazz in Europe, there is this background of jazz bars. It is hard to ignore in the jazz culture in Europe. And I'm not a jazz expert by any stretch, but I enjoy a little jazz here and there. And it sets the tone, and it's in the background for a lot of bars. And this bar is called Stumpen. It's a jazz bar in the old town of Stockholm.
Cool. I think I've heard of that one, actually. Yeah.
Of course you have. Been going since around the mid 20th century. Takes its name from the story that the building used to be a pawn shop, and when people would make payments on their things that have been pawned, they would get a stamp. So now the walls, an ongoing theme here. The walls are kind of decorated with quirky things. There's probably a dusty bird cage from the doctor. There's also one at Stumpen. And the center of Stockholm, the Gamla Stan, is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Picture postcard perfect. It's a little crowded at times. To Stumpen, you come at night, go down an alleyway, you find it, you go, and it's a whole different world. This place is rocking, live music all the time, jazz. We watched a band that was playing like a lot of like ska, a totally unique, kind of maybe not what you expected.
I guess so, but every European city does, like you say, have this, seem to have this jazz, this core group of people who find it in Berlin, for example. There's a bar called York Schlossen, which is very similar to Papa Joe's, which we talked about, somehow captures that kind of golden era, but they managed to do it in a way that makes you feel really comfortable. Some live music venues, the formality of it can sometimes maybe not put you at ease, but these places really do. They feel like you can just come in. It doesn't matter what you're wearing, who you are, where you're from, and everybody inside has that feeling as well, and that kind of lends itself to having a good atmosphere.
We ended up talking to somebody, and we kind of made friends with somebody from Stockholm that night there. And what you kind of touched on as well with Papa Joe's, this isn't exclusive to jazz bars, but a good bar too will always still have a good stream of locals in there. There'll be the curious tourists, but they somehow manage to coexist, and it worked. And there's a happy medium there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. In fact, that's touching on a point which I'm gonna, when we move on to my next suggestion, I'll be moving on to talk about that a little bit, because as I feel partly responsible for telling people about great bars, then they become more touristy, and then the character changes. You have to wonder, like, part of the reason that these places are good is probably because they do have that balance where, a local's going to go there and not get freaked out by the number of tourists. And how do you find the balance between that without ruining the reason it was good in the first place? Okay, so the next one is Simplicate in Budapest. So anybody who's traveled around sort of Central Europe may have heard of this. It's what's called a ruin bar. This is a craze that started in Budapest in the sort of mid to late 2000s. The concept was that there were a load of abandoned buildings in the main part of Budapest, which is Pest, which is on the east side of the Danube. But this has meant that there was all this space for people that wanted to have a venue for culture, for hanging out. Suddenly, within a few years, had all taken over all these sort of semi-abandoned spaces. One of the first ones was Simpler. Simplicate just means simple garden. So initially it was just tables and chairs and people. They didn't have much money, so they were just going around decorating the place with their own graffiti, stickers and whatever. And over time, this just kind of morphed into what is like a work of art, a cultural centre. They have a farmer's market on a Saturday. You can explore, so it's not just somewhere with a few tables and chairs and benches. This is a complex. You can have a completely different night if you're sat in one part of the complex to the other, or whether you're going to be there during the day or in the night. And since 2007, it's probably become a genuine tourist attraction. So when people say, I'm going to Budapest, Simplicate is the answer to, what are the top 4 or 5 things that you're going to do in Budapest. So I'm going to go to the thermal spa, the chain bridge. I'm going to go up to the Citadel. I'm going to go out to the ruined bars, and I'm going to go to Simpler.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mentioned, how is this going to balance with tourism? Because, for sure, this is one of the more touristy places you're likely to go to, especially in Hungary. There's actually someone has done a PhD on this subject. They're talking about how Simpler can go from somewhere which originally had locals just hanging out in it to being probably one of the biggest tourist destinations in Hungary without losing its essence. And the answer is it's kind of morphed. It's not as a wild or alternative than it used to be, inevitably, but they have made a few changes which mean that it's actually, in some respects, better than it used to be. So the range of drinks is exceptionally good for an alternative bar. The environment, they haven't changed too much. They made it only a couple of minor alterations, so it still feels like kind of slightly, off the wall alternative. So they haven't lost that essence. So it is somewhere you can still go now, even though you have to queue up with tourists to get in, and you can still feel that this is a very valuable spot and a massive contribution to European bar culture.
That's a special bar there, absolutely. And, has become almost just a symbol of Budapest.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there have been a few other ruined bars I can mention that have fallen by the wayside that were definitely part of that movement. But Simpler had the right core ingredients in the first place. Everybody's first time going into Simpler and being like, oh my God, wow. Because you're overwhelmed by the sights, the sound, the smell as well, because there's shisha going on, like when you walk in initially. So you just kind of sensory overload when you first go in there. Over the last kind of 12 years, it's definitely sort of moved towards being a tourist destination. But nevertheless, I think even allowing for that, you've got to give credit where it's due. There is very little else like it in the whole of Europe.
My next one, the Jernbana Cafe, this bar outside the train station in Copenhagen. This place, they're obsessed with trains in there, and there's neon signs, and there's somebody playing music on a keyboard or something like that when you go in there. And this place there could not be a better place to have a little aquavit, tip back a little aquavit or a beer before you catch a train out of Copenhagen. 100%.
It is right next to the station, or the back end of the station. So it's the first port of call. So if you're desperate to go for a drink once you arrive in Copenhagen, there's only one answer. Like, you're not going to go anywhere else. It has to be Jernbana Cafe.
Absolutely. And it's fourth generation now running the place or assisting in management. And it's like, that's another theme with some of these bars. It's the passion and the sometimes often family run through some of these famous ones that are handed down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really important point, which I don't think we've mentioned yet, which is that a lot of these really good places, they survive through, sheer stubbornness and bloody-mindedness, because you can only have a business that has lasted for 4 generations if they've seen through some very tough times and loads of occasions where, the whole pub may have been under threat of closure. So, the fact that they've managed to survive, I'm a bit of a romantic in that sense. So any place that survived tough times always gets an extra tick in the box.
Absolutely. And they're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. And super distinctive place as well. So if you really want to go somewhere that's offering something that, again, this is like the running theme of the bars we've talked about, really, that they just somehow managed to offer something that another place doesn't.
Slightly different, and they do it well.
Okay, so the last one, which was number 1 this year on our top 100, is, I'm going to say it in French, so apologies to Flemish speakers. I'm going to say it in French. It's La Fleur en Papier Doré, which is the flower in golden paper. This is in Brussels. It's not in central Brussels, but it's not too far away from the centre. Probably take you about 10 minutes walk. What is it? It's a historic cafe which has a long history and a grounding in the arts. So the Surrealist movement, Magritte, for example, his set used to use it as their base for evening drinking and associating. And it's captured and it's kept a lot of the character from that time. So this was a pub that was owned by the same person for a very long time, for about 50 years. And they deliberately didn't change much about the interior. So when you walk in, it's not only artistic, but it's very well preserved. It's almost like a work of art in itself, I would say. Like if you just take a look around, stand in the middle of the room, take a look around at yourself, and it's like you are inside a painting. It's that beautiful. And obviously, as a result, it has a really special atmosphere because whether it's quiet or it's busy, you are in that environment, that one-off, that piece of art that no one else has created, that's obviously survived all this time because everybody recognized this, that it's very special. It's also a place that nearly closed down loads of times. So in the last 20 years, I think there have been four times where it's been closed for an extended period. And thankfully, a collective have saved it. So Brasserie Verschuren and Brasserie de la Seine combined to effectively save the pub. They now run the pub, and that's good too because the beer selection has increased. That was maybe the one aspect of the pub you could criticise. It was very mainstream for beers, but now they have lots of really lovely beers from de la Seine on tap. So, and that kind of fills the last bit in the box for me. Another good sign of this is it has brought through a younger audience in the last couple of years. So it's moved from being a kind of contemplative, atmospheric cafe, but maybe not one that was always popular with young people. Certain people, obviously, but these days there's a genuine mixture. And I always find, personally anyway, if you have different generations in a pub, that's all for the better because we've all got our own ways we can contribute to conversation. And if you have different kinds of people, that's the types of conversation you're going to be having are so much more interesting.
Totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I published this as number one on my bar guide, they found out about it. So they found out on the grapevine this had happened, but they didn't know who I was. So I ended up on Belgian TV with kind of the caption, "Who is Jack Anderton?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really not that hard to track down. I've got like a dozen social media outputs. Everyone else seems to manage it, but for whatever reason, they hadn't managed it. And then someone sent me this YouTube clip of Belgian TV being like, yeah, who's this guy?
I'm going to have to look that up. So last but not least, one of the most famous beer halls in all of Europe, the Hofbräuhaus in Munich. It may seem like this is just a tourist place, but this is a historic, people would know way more about it than I do, but a historic heart and soul of Munich, this beer hall. And what it does perfectly too is it manages to walk that fine line of wide-eyed tourists who are like, I remember the first time I went in there and got myself a wheat beer, and I was just looking around like, I can't believe I'm actually in this place, this famous beer hall, with the locals who are coming in their lederhosen, steins that are locked up, the regulars who come and unlock their stein and take it out because it's theirs. It manages to somehow do all that. And it's the same magical experience every time you go in there. Yes, there's other great beer halls in Munich, but this one has that oomph, no pun intended, of the music and the crowds from around the world that gives it that magic too.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd say about it is the sheer scale of it. I mean, it's like walking into a cathedral, but the cathedral's been built for beer drinking and socializing. When you're looking up at the ceiling, it's full of colorful murals, and it just makes you think, God, I could be in a cathedral. Like the scale is so similar. And there are other subtler ways which make you feel like that. So they walk around with these giant pretzels. Obviously, the beers come in litre portions as standard rather than half litre. And that kind of all makes you feel like kind of a little piece in this overall picture. And it's so big that, yeah, it can completely accommodate locals and tourists without them clashing. And that's a really great thing to have. The main room, I would say, is my favorite, but there's a huge beer garden. The back room as well has quite a lot going for it. When we talk about Hofbrauhaus, obviously it's got a somewhat notorious history, and people are attracted to inevitably. But people are also looking for, why has it been this kind of pull for so many people over the years? So it has that magnetism. And yeah, sometimes you go into a place and you think, yeah, you know what? Just because these tiny little details are not there. It really doesn't matter. This is about like the overall impression, and Hofbrauhaus gives you that grand overall impression of just this enormous cathedral and love letter to hanging out, enjoying a beer and enjoying music and enjoying life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what the best of European bars do. We're going to have to leave it there today. What is the actual address? The URL? It's europeanbarguide.com.
Yeah, the europeanbarguide.com. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, and just put Europe Bar in and we'll come up.
Let's definitely have a pint in York sometime, or Leeds.
Yeah, that would be great. I was going to suggest, we can pop over. I can have a pint in the Bluebell with you.
All right, that sounds great. Jack, thanks for joining me.